Hi, I'm Paul Moniz, business reporter here at the Oklahoman and News OK. I'm joined today in the studio by Josh Adler, the founding CEO of SourceWater, which is a Boston-based company, startup that's looking to kind of match up users of water in the energy industry, and also has offices in Pittsburgh and Houston, but is trying to get started in kind of matching up how companies use water in the field and how to use it efficiently, recycling and matching the users with the ones that need it too. So Josh, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Oklahoma.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit of why you're here this week in Oklahoma and what you're up to here in Oklahoma City.
Well, there's a big joint convention in Oklahoma City this week between the IOGCC and the GWPCA, which is the Groundwater Protection Association. And it's a convergence of the energy industry and the water industry and energy and water regulators. So that's why we came out to Oklahoma City this week to meet with those people and tell them about what we're doing at SourceWater.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more about how the SourceWater concept works. You have kind of an online marketplace to match not only buyers and sellers, but kind of almost like that. I mean, who needs water and where is a pretty important part of the energy cycle.
Yeah, that's exactly right. SourceWater is the first online marketplace for sourcing and recycling and managing water for oil and gas production. So we've built an online marketplace where companies that need water and companies that have water and also companies that provide the services that move the water around can find each other efficiently. And one of the big opportunities there, both for industry and the environment, is that we can really enable companies to recycle water in between each other instead of consuming as much fresh water and disposing of their wastewater underground where it never comes back.
Okay.
So we can match up companies that have wastewater with companies that need water, and in that way enable recycling between companies.
Okay. Can you give me kind of a quick overview of kind of how water is used in the energy process? I mean, you hear a lot of things about, well, they use a lot of water, but in context with agriculture, with golf course irrigation, that kind of stuff, it's actually fairly small. But the water they do use on site is a lot at one time, but it's not a broad volume really issue.
Yeah, that's right. It's each new unconventional oil or gas well completion might use from 100,000 to 200,000 barrels of water, which is about 4 to 8 million gallons, which sounds like a lot, but actually they're only using it for a couple of days. And so on average across the year, oil and gas production is probably the smallest industrial user of water you could possibly name. It's really tiny. It's like 0.1% of the U.S. water supply, where agriculture is something like 80% of water consumption.
Okay. And a lot of this water that's used and it's produced is maybe taken out of the water cycle, so to speak. How are you kind of helping companies deal with that?
Yeah, it's interesting that the energy industry, and a lot of people don't know this, actually produces about 10 times as much water as it consumes. Because when you're, after you complete a new oil or gas well, you're actually bringing up a lot more water that's been underground than oil or gas that's been underground. So there's a real opportunity for the energy industry to be a net contributor of water to the environment. Today, there's still some progress that needs to be made on treatment technologies to make it cost effective to do that. So what happens most of the time is that produced water, or wastewater, is sent to something called disposal wells, which are EPA approved, basically what it sounds like, holes in the ground where you're allowed to pump wastewater and it stays down there and is removed from the environment. But it's certainly better for the environment and for the industry if, as much as possible, that water could be reused and recycled instead of basically being thrown away.
Right.
And it's actually technically very feasible. It's not hard at all to reuse produced water from oil and gas wells in the completion of new oil and gas wells.
Okay.
It's more of a timing and location issue, and that's what we solve. We put the companies that have the water together with the companies that need the water.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about how the website works in terms of in a specialized area. I mean, company A has a need for water, company B has a trucking firm or can take it there. How does that really work in real life when you manage that transaction?
Yeah, well, companies can go on SourceWater.com and create listings. They can create a water listing, a water source listing, or a water need listing. So a water source listing might be a tank or pit of produced water. It might be a farmer or rancher who has water or wastewater or brackish water that they want to sell. It could be an industrial facility that has wastewater that they want to sell or have treated, or a pipeline or utility. A water need listing is either a new well pad that needs water for completion, or it could be a disposal well that wants to take water, or it could be a treatment facility that wants to take water and treat it and then sell it back into the market as a water seller. Okay. So companies can go on, create these listings, and then much like on Expedia or eBay or Orbitz or Airbnb, the companies can do a search of all the listings in their area of the type they're looking for and sort them by water quality, volume, date, total cost, price, all those kinds of things that you expect from modern websites. Okay. And get some nice looking search results, pick what they want, and then book it. The other aspect that we're implementing is once you know that you've got a certain amount of water that you want to move from point A to point B, you can also send out a request for quotations for the trucks or pipes to move that water at the best available price and capacity for those dates when you need it.
Now, why has nobody done this before? I mean, the internet has obviously been a big part of this push to match the buyers and sellers in the water marketplace, but why is this coming up now?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because water's got to be not just the largest industrial commodity for which there's no real marketplace, but it's probably the largest industrial commodity in the world, period. Right. So what's new now? I think what's new is unconventional oil and gas production, fracking, because again, while unconventional or fracking doesn't actually use that much water compared to most other uses you could possibly name, it does have a unique property, which is that it is probably the only intensive use of water that is both short-term and also uncorrelated to the location of water. Okay. So if you're going to build a power plant, which uses a lot of water, you know you're going to put that power plant next to a river or on a lake or by the ocean or something, because you don't want to have to move the water to it. But you can't choose to put the oil next to a river or a lake or the ocean. The oil is wherever it is. Right. And 70% of the time, the oil is actually not close to water. It's in water-stressed areas like Oklahoma, West Texas, North Dakota. Okay. The other reason is that because unconventional oil and gas wells only use the water for a few days, it doesn't make sense to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in building water pipelines and permanent infrastructure to bring the water there. You might do that if you were, say, building a copper mine in the desert. You're going to run it for 30, 50 years. Okay, you can invest $100 million in a water pipeline. But for a new unconventional oil or gas well, you're only going to be stimulating the well for a couple of days. Right. So it doesn't make sense to invest a ton of money in permanent infrastructure. You just need a short-term source point and use point. And that's where we really have this opportunity to create the online marketplace to connect these constantly shifting sources and uses of water.
Now, what's the value proposition that you're pitching to companies to use this marketplace? I mean, right now we're in kind of a low price environment, obviously. A lot of focus is on efficiencies, getting services costs down, cost per well down. How would something like this help in that respect?
Well, it turns out that water management is the single largest operating cost of a producing oil or gas well, anywhere from 25 to 50% of the cost of running that well is dealing with the water, which really means trucking and disposal mainly. And so if we can create efficiencies in that process, and I know that we do, even a few dollars barrel difference, if oil is at $40 or $50 a barrel, can really make a difference in whether a company is profitable or whether they have to plug the well and go home.
Right.
And so that's really what our big opportunity is today, is to reduce that single largest operating cost of oil and gas wells.
Okay. I mean, the internet with the website it's a national marketplace, but these water markets are highly kind of localized and concentrated in certain areas. What's the regulatory regimes like in areas that make it more easy for this to happen or more difficult for this to happen?
It's really all over the place. Okay. Every state and sometimes different counties or groundwater districts have their own set of rules. And so it can be quite complex to trade water between jurisdictions and within jurisdictions. Some states have friendlier laws than others for recycling. Texas actually has a new law that really helps recycling by limiting the liability of wastewater generators when they send their produced water for beneficial reuse to somebody else. It cuts off their liability at the point of transfer of the water. Other states like Pennsylvania actually hold you to that liability even after your water's been sent to somebody else and then sent to somebody else. So even if you had nothing to do with somebody spilling your water because you sent it to them and you thought they were going to be responsible, the state could still come after you, and that discourages companies from recycling.
Okay. All right. I guess in closing, can you kind of tell me where you're active right now, and then what the prospects of you coming to a state like Oklahoma might be with this kind of marketplace model?
We're most active where we started in the Appalachia Basin or Marcellus Shale, basically western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, okay. And northern West Virginia. We're most active there because, for various reasons, they have extremely high produced water disposal cost there. Okay. And so they're very motivated to find ways to recycle that water instead of disposing of it. We're also pretty active in West Texas, where the motivation is more the scarcity of fresh water, encouraging, incentivizing companies to try to find alternative sources, and so we help with that. And in Oklahoma, it's very interesting because of recent concern around possible seismicity of disposal well usage in some cases. That could be a good argument to do more recycling, and so we can help the market and the industry to find ways to recycle more of that wastewater and dispose of less of it. And that could be a real benefit for the state of Oklahoma.
Great. Well, Josh, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you coming by the studio and taking some time out of the conference schedule to chat with us today.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks.